Most RAG failures are not retrieval failures. They are prompt assembly failures, hiding in plain sight.
Exactly. Teams obsess over chunking and re-rankers, then never inspect the actual final prompt that hits the model. That is where the system either becomes reliable or quietly drifts.
So, when you say final prompt, you do not mean the nice system prompt in the code review. You mean the fully rendered payload after all the moving parts collide.
Right. The final prompt appears at the last step before model inference, after system instructions, user query, conversation history, retrieved context, tool outputs, and any app-side formatting are merged into one request.
And that is the part people skip because they assume the plumbing is boring.
Which is expensive. If your answer is wrong, evasive, or overconfident, the fastest way to debug is to log and inspect that final assembled prompt, not just the retriever scores.
Give me a concrete case. A team says our RAGbot misses policy details. What do you look at first?
First, I check whether the user question survived intact. Then I check instruction order, context order, truncation, document boundaries, citations format, and whether irrelevant chat history crowded out the useful evidence.
That sounds basic, but basic is where power shifts happen. The team that sees the prompt sees the bug. The team that does not keeps tuning embeddings for a week.
Here is a practical example. A support bot gets the question, can enterprise customers export audit logs for 90 days? Retrieval finds the right policy page, but the final prompt places a long prior conversation above it and clips the last third of the policy snippet. The model answers, maybe, depending on plan. Not because retrieval failed, but because assembly buried the evidence.
So what details should a programmer check first, in order, when they open that final prompt?
Start with 4 things. 1. The exact user ask. 2. The governing instruction, especially what the model should do when evidence is weak. 3. The retrieved context that actually made it into the prompt. 4. Token pressure, meaning what got dropped, compressed, or reordered.
I want sharper edges on that. What does a bad version look like?
Bad looks like this. The question is rewritten too aggressively. The top instruction says be helpful, but never says answer only from provided context. The prompt includes 6 chunks with no labels, no source names, and 1 chunk is duplicated. The most relevant passage is last, right before the cutoff.
And a healthy case.
Healthy is boring in the best way. The user question is preserved or lightly normalized. The instructions are short and unambiguous. Retrieved passages are labeled, scoped, and obviously relevant. The highest value evidence appears early. The model has enough room left to reason and answer.
Give me another scenario, because this is where people still blame the model.
Sure. Imagine an internal finance assistant. An analyst asks, what changed in the revenue recognition rule after January? Retrieval gets the amendment memo. But the final prompt also includes stale chat history about pricing discounts, plus a summarizer output that paraphrases the memo incorrectly. The model answers from the paraphrase, not the source. If you inspect only retrieval, you think the system worked.
That is brutal, because the dashboard can still look green. High retrieval hit rate, fast latency, confident answer, and still wrong.
Exactly. Prompt inspection is where you catch mismatches between apparent pipeline health and actual decision quality. It is the difference between telemetry and truth.
Where in the pipeline should teams make this visible? In development only, or all the way into production?
Both, with guardrails. In development, render the full request in a trace view. In production, log a redacted prompt snapshot or structured prompt components so you can inspect failures without leaking secrets. If you cannot reconstruct the final prompt, you cannot really debug the system.
Now, we are in strategy territory. The companies that can reconstruct failures will outrun the ones chasing vibes.
Yes, because they can answer precise questions. Which instruction won? Which chunk was seen? Which chunk was cut? Whether the answer had evidence. That turns RAG from folklore into engineering.
What is one practical inspection routine a programmer can start this week?
Take 10 failed answers and 10 good ones. For each, inspect the final prompt side by side with the output. Highlight the user ask, instructions, included sources, source order, and any truncation markers. Then ask one question. If I were the model, given only this prompt, would the observed answer be predictable?
That sounds almost embarrassingly simple.
It is simple, and it works. You will find hidden prompt joins, malformed separators, irrelevant history, duplicate chunks, and instructions that contradict your product policy. Those are high-leverage fixes.
Last example. A legal search assistant says a clause is mandatory when it is actually optional. What might the final prompt reveal?
Often, that the retrieved clause came with neighboring commentary, but the formatter stripped headings and section numbers. The model saw floating text with no jurisdiction label, no effective date, and no distinction between commentary and source. A healthy prompt would preserve those boundaries and present the governing passage first.
So the lesson is not inspect prompts because prompts are mystical. It is inspect prompts because that is the real contract you hand the model.
Exactly. In RAG, your system is only as trustworthy as the final prompt you can see, explain, and defend.